Hey crew, I've got the key to this 22 Toyota bZ4X. We are going to take it for a drive, but first let's check out how it looks on the inside and outside. This is the XLE front drive trim, so the entry level for this new model. You still get LED projector headlights and DRLs, functional corner vents, and really a very distinctive face. I like it. In profile, we see the black painted over fenders, which stand out much more on this wind chill pearl white paint, but I think the bZ4 looks way better in black, so not as much of a contrast for that one. The XLE gets 18-inch wheels, but the limited trim gets 20s. This is your charge port door, and Toyota says that via a level 2 charger, you'll go from 0 to 100% in about 11 hours, so overnight. Via DC fast charging, it'll take less than 60 minutes to get from 0 to 80%. Stepping back to look at the profile, using the RAV4 as a good reference point, this vehicle is 3.7 inches longer, 2 inches lower, and 0.2 inches wider than a RAV4. Yet it still has 8.1 inches of ground clearance, so it's a high-riding battery electric vehicle. It just looks a bit sportier than a RAV4. At the back, we have this LED taillight bar going across the rear beneath a subtle black lip spoiler. Down low is a black diffuser. All in all, I appreciate the exterior of the vehicle. The name? Not so much. Let's check out that interior. To show the interior, I'm now switching to the top of the line limited trim, this one painted in heavy metal gray, with the optional roof-mounted split spoiler. That does look cool. Opening up and looking inside, this one is clad in the light gray color that's only offered on limited trims, where we have standard Sof-Tex leatherette seats with perforations. The weather package gives us 3 stages of rear seat heating, injection molding on the doors, leatherette in the center in that light gray color, hard touch plastic down low, and lots of gloss black that we know smudges, scratches, collects dust, don't love it. One touch up down rear windows, sliding inside. Behind my own seat at 6 feet tall, I've got tons of knee room. Foot pockets don't really exist, unfortunately, and like most EVs with the batteries on the floor is raised up, so the knees are kind of pitched up at an angle. My head does clear the roof, if only just barely, and though the rear seats do recline, when I do that, yeah, my head's now resting on the roof, so taller adults are going to have the seat back at the upright position. You do have 2 cup holders, padded armrests, some storage, 2 air vents, and 2 USB ports in the rear. Also with no drive shaft hump, it's easy to slide into the middle seat, though in this position my head is now resting on the roof. Little bit of door rattle, but this is a pre-production model, so I'm not going to judge it too harshly. Up front, we have more well-bolstered seats with heating and ventilation as standard on limited, power adjustments for the driver, manual adjustments for the passenger, unfortunate. 4 one-touch windows, power mirror controls, not power folding though. Press this button for the trunk release. And the tailgate does go up nice and high for taller folks. Inside we find 27 cubic feet of space, and under this floor here, we have a spot for your charging cables. It is a 2-position load floor with a slight adjustment down low. Here's your JBL sub for the optional 9-speaker sound system. The seats split fold 60/40. I'll show you some footage of them all the way down. We have good cargo space back here. Power close and lock on the limited trim. Sliding inside. The driver gets a heated leather-wrapped steering wheel, nice and small diameter, good thickness, lots of controls on the wheel, the left side for the digital instrument cluster that I'm going to turn on now, and the right side for all of your active safety features that you can configure and that are all standard on every bZ4X. Now, this configuration here is somewhat odd because there is a limited range of tilt and telescope to the wheel, and unless you're in the perfect range, the wheel rim kind of bisects the digital gauge cluster. So I wish there was just more adjustment. You have a 12.3-inch touchscreen infotainment as standard, wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. This is a really good system. They borrowed it from the new Toyota Tundra. Pretty responsive. Tons of gloss black in here, unfortunately. There is standard wireless smartphone charging. You got your 2 cup holders, a padded armrest that can slide forward and open up to reveal 2 different levels of storage space. Visibility is okay. Out the back, those are some thick D-pillars, and those side windows aren't helping much. So there's some blind spots, but we do have standard blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alerts. Fabric on the dashboard is a nice touch. It's some funkiness in here, but there's this feeling of space, and everything is pretty easy to use, pretty easy to access. Now let's take it for a drive. All right, let's fire it up. Small animation on the gauge cluster, just the Toyota logo on the infotainment. I'm not going to touch any settings here, which will leave us in normal drive mode to get the ball rolling. Press down on this knob selector. Crank it over to the left to bring up your camera angle selections. You have a bird's eye view. You got a high resolution backup camera that has been upgraded on the latest generation of Toyota's Safety Sense. And then if you hit this, it's a super wide view. I'm going to back up far enough the parking sensors aren't dinging. Oh, that's not the parking sensors. It just dings like that in reverse. Interesting. That's kind of annoying. And there's also, when you hit the view button here, a high resolution front camera. And this is neat. You get the transparent view of the vehicle, so you can kind of see exactly where the wheels are situated. Don't mind me as I just cut across this parking lot. Folks, do you know who that is over there? That's the Topher. If you guys haven't seen his videos, you should absolutely check him out. As we ease on out of here, over some bumps. It's a good test of the suspension. We can talk powertrains. Now, I didn't get out from the interior to this driving portion. I didn't get out of the limited all-wheel drive. So we have the dual motor setup with 214 horsepower on tap and 258 pound-feet of torque. And the dual motor configuration gives us that all-wheel drive versus the front-wheel drive single motor configuration. And some EV manufacturers do single motor rear drive, like Tesla. Some do for single motor front drive. Toyota went with that setup. Turning radius test. Ooh, that's pretty tidy. And those figures, 214 horse, 248 pound-feet, are not extraordinary, though they appear to be plenty to get the bZ up to speed. And yes, I refuse to say the full name, bZ4X, every time I'm talking about it. Over this bumpier section of road and over those initial bumps, the suspension feels very well damped. Excellent ride quality. And these seats are superbly comfortable. Gonna do a 0 to 60 test here. There it is, 6 seconds. That's pretty quick, especially considering Toyota estimates 6.5 seconds for the all-wheel drive bZ. So we beat that. So not breakneck acceleration off the line, but reasonable for the segment of entry-level EVs. How about the mid-range? We're Around 55. Yeah, okay. Perfectly sufficient for your average use. And delivered right away. One thing Toyota is not doing is giving drivers a variety of different regen braking options. If you just hop in the car and head out for a drive and you take your foot off the throttle, it will slowly, very slowly, slow the vehicle down. But if you want more braking regeneration, you're just going to have this one button here, they call it a brake boost button, that when you press and you take your foot off the brake, it slows it down only mildly more than the standard no brake boost. And I feel like that's something we are missing out on. I know Toyota is going for simplicity here, but one, to either have a completely no regen coast option plus a one pedal drive experience. I would love to see those features because they're broadly available in this EV market, and they do add to the driving experience, enhance it in a variety of ways. And those things I don't think would complicate it. I think they would make it better. So Toyota, please add those in future iterations, future upgrades to the bZ, because you're missing out. We are going to come up to something of a curve here, and I look forward to exploring the bZ's drive experience. So here we go. Are the brakes? Ooh, they bite down nicely. Give the cyclist some room. So yes, the brakes work great. There was no mystery to the pedal when I put my foot on it. It clamped down right away, had a nice bite, slowed us easily, and then going in through the curve, it negotiated it smoothly. There was not much feedback at all through the steering. However, the weight being so down low, as with a lot of these BEVs, meant that you could handle it confidently. And that, for a driver that's coming out of an ICE car, is going to be a nice experience when they're so used to top heaviness. This is not a sports vehicle, but the inherent architecture gives it better handling properties than your average ICE. And for those of you wondering what the heck ICE means, it's internal combustion engine. Gas-powered cars, to put it another way. Now on the highway, I'm going to turn on the adaptive cruise control feature with lane centering assist that's standard on every bZ, and see how it stays in the middle of the lane. And with people coming in, it slows to that same following distance. It doesn't let you keep your hands off the wheel for very long. How does it handle this curve up here? Yeah, pretty flawlessly. And while coasting on the highway, this surface I know to be far louder than most highways. So I'm going to try to factor that in as I evaluate the cabin insulation, which doesn't right now appear to be great. I'm going to say that at a highway speed, you're going to get some of that wind noise, little of the road noise, no tire noise to speak of. though the price is approaching luxury car territory, we don't have luxury car insulation. Though to revisit the ride quality, I would argue this is pretty much Lexus levels of smoothness. So you get some good, some bad in terms of your comfort as a daily driver. Now we've hopped back behind the wheel of the XLE front drive to see how this one performs in comparison to the all-wheel drive model. So our powertrain, we're looking at a front drive setup, and I'm going to talk more about the other stuff in a second. Zero to 60 in 6.8 seconds. All right, so 0.8 of a second slower than the all-wheel drive model. And still better than Toyota's own estimate of 7.1 seconds. Back to the powertrain discussion. Single front motor. It's actually a different battery setup, different manufacturer than the all-wheel drive configuration. We have 201 horsepower from that single electric motor and 196 pound-feet of torque. So not as quick in a straight line, but it does way less than the all-wheel drive model. So how's it handle? It feels distinctly front drive. You felt the push of the nose. However, you also feel the weight savings compared to the all-wheel drive model. It was actually more spry to drive, more entertaining. Wow, is this the enthusiast version of this new all-electric Toyota? It's better than just potential handling benefits. The front drive model has quite a bit more range than at least that limited all-wheel drive vehicle I drove just a few moments ago. This one has 252 miles of range to the limited all-wheel drive's 222. And somewhere in the middle of that is the XLE all-wheel drive and the limited front drive. So we're bookending the bZ4X range. Oh, gosh, it's a labor to say that name. And we should probably talk about why Toyota calls it that. At least what they marketed as why they call it that. bZ stands for Beyond Zero, which to them just means let's make this simple. Let's make EVs simple by giving a complicated name to it. That doesn't make any sense, but that's what they say. And the 4 is the size of the vehicle because Toyota plans on having a full vehicle portfolio built out of the bZ nomenclature. So in theory, there would be a bZ2 something that's smaller than this and a bZ6 something that's bigger than this. And then the X just stands for what X is seeming to stand for in most vehicles on sale, crossover or SUV. So that's how they would explain it. Unfortunately, I don't know how that name got past the focus groups because no one is just going to casually be like, oh, what do you drive? Oh, I drive the Honda Odyssey. What do you drive? Oh, I drive the Toyota bZ4X. No one's going to say that. They're just all going to abbreviate it. Now, putting that overly complicated name aside, how is the bZ4X as a value proposition in this growing battery electric vehicle market? The starting figure for this car in XLE front drive trim is $43,200. Add all-wheel drive to that equation for $2,000, and if we're talking range topper, it's just under $50,000. There are some additional options you can add on, but that's the trim spread. For comparison purposes, I'm going to use the variation of the bZ4 that I most prefer, and that would be getting the all-wheel drive system with the X mode that gives you the variability for adventures, and you do have that ground clearance and just that assurance and the extra performance, but in the XLE trim, because you don't need the extra features. It adds weight, and it also sacrifices like 6 miles of range, which when we're talking just barely over 200 does matter. So XLE all-wheel drive compared to the Ford Mustang Mach-E all-wheel drive. That's about $47,000. It has 224 miles of range, so about 4 miles less than the XLE all-wheel drive at 228 miles. It gets to 60 quicker in just 5.2 seconds, and the look of it, I think, is good. I don't think it's necessarily any better than the bZ4. I like the look of this vehicle, and the interior feels as nicely accommodated in this as the Mach-E. However, there's certain things like this whole layout that I prefer that Mach-E. You've got just to throw in a front drive exclusive model, the Chevy Bolt EUV, and that one's the cheapest of the set at about $38,000. It only has 200 horsepower. It has 247 miles of range, so more range. I just don't think it looks very good. And then we have the Hyundai Ioniq SE all-wheel drive. That one's also think about $47,000, maybe $48,000. It has 320 horsepower, so quite a bit more power. 0 to 60 is a lot quicker at 4.7 or 4.8 seconds. The range is also better at 256 miles. I think the Ioniq looks the coolest outside. Inside, I could take it or leave it. Where the bZ4X makes a lot of sense is, ironically, the simplicity of the car. Ironic because of the name. It's so easy to use. The power is just the right amount for the average consumer. Charging it is simple. Toyota is also throwing in a year of complimentary fast charging from EVgo stations. It can do its overnight thing. It's got enough range for most people to feel confident, not have that range anxiety. And it drives very comfortably, very easily. And though this is Toyota's first nationally available battery electric vehicle, they have so much experience in electrified vehicles that I'd kind of trust that this one is going to last in the same way that other Toyota vehicles do. I would really consider it if you're shopping the space, especially for first-time battery electric vehicle buyers. I hope you guys have enjoyed this POV drive review. If you did, please like, comment, and share the video. Subscribe to the channel, hit that bell to get notified, and I'll see you next time.